Hello everyone and welcome to this Nokia webinar, the digital pulse of the chemical industry. My name is Caroline Williams. I head marketing for Enterprise Campus Edge Solutions, and today we talk about Industry 4.0 digitalization challenges and best practices in the chemicals and plastics industry. So Nokia has joined forces with industry expert EMG Consultants to conduct a study of current and future trends in the chemical industry. So how is industrialization impacting their business? What are their challenges and what are their roadblocks and best practices? So industry experts have shared with us what they're doing to improve worker safety, security, sustainability, and productivity on the journey for Industry 4.0. So today we will present these key findings of this white paper with you, and we will talk about various case studies and also customer cases on learnings and recommendations, in particular for the chemicals and plastics industry. So don't forget to send your questions during the webinar, because we will have a Q&A session at the end where we will have time to answer them. So let me introduce you to our guest today. We have with us Michelle Ponto. She is a strategist at EMG and an Emmy-nominated journalist. And she's helping industrial and manufacturing organizations understand where the market is going and the challenges their customers are facing. So she's done all the in-depth interviews, and you'll hear from her in a minute. Catherine Gull from Cellnex, Head of Product Solutions and Business Development. And she has spent most of her career in senior positions in the telecommunications and technology industry. So she participated in many private mobile network projects in the US and Europe in the past 8 years. And now she is heading product solutions and business development at Cellnex Telecom. So very warm welcome also to Catherine. And then we have Nedo Kulina, Enterprise Key Account Manager for Campus Private Wireless at Nokia. And he has more than 20 years experience in the telecom industry and worked on projects involving national and international enterprises as well as many in the chemical industry. So welcome everyone. Now let's get started and learn more about the state of digitalization in the chemical and plastics industry. So Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Carlene. So one of the things that came up when I was interviewing all the experts for this report is that the chemical manufacturing industry is different from the normal manufacturing industry just because it's not an assembly of parts. One thing that really came out is that it's like a giant lab. They process and they consume a lot of data, and this has been something that's not new. They have been consuming a lot of data for the last 40, 50 years. They need their information in real time, not just for security issues and to see where things are happening throughout the manufacturing area, but because they are constantly monitoring the chemical processes. They're also looking to process simulations, and they have been processing simulations in different ways throughout the years. And as technology is advancing, how they are processing these simulations has also advanced. So they are thinking of using digital twins. They want to see these simulations in real time. They want to see them really clear. The more information they can gather from them, the better. And the other thing that came out of it is the cost of production is increasing. And this is happening across all manufacturing areas. But for them, it affects the supply chain. They affect a lot of different areas. It's chemicals. So, what they create from the chemicals affects the plastics industry. It affects car manufacturing. It affects a lot of the other manufacturing areas. So they are looking for ways to make production more efficient and less waste, and be able to reach their customers quicker. They are facing the same challenges as the other industries. So they are looking at cybersecurity, they are looking at safety, they are looking at all these things that other manufacturing industries are looking at. But there are a couple of special nuances that make them unique, and we'll go through them as we go through the report. The interviews that we did were across the US and the EU, throughout Europe, and the size of the companies varied. So we looked at specialty chemical companies that are in the small to medium size, and we also interviewed people who were from the large global companies. So some of the big ones throughout the world with names that people will definitely recognize. What some of the key findings that came out, especially with the small chemical companies, is there was a difference between where they were in their digitalization process and where the large companies were. So these small to medium sized, especially chemical companies, when we asked them where they were in their digitalization process on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being where we've got everything down pat and 1 we're just starting, they said that they were at a level 2 or 3. So they are still in the getting started into their digitalization process. Some of them were still working in the area where they were moving their data from Excel spreadsheets into something that was more automated, something that would be uploaded immediately and accessible into a system. Others had already done that, and they were working towards a long-term roadmap. When I asked these ones about their KPIs, they said at this point they were more focused on getting things right, changing the way people were thinking about digitalization rather than KPIs. But they said that even without having specific KPIs in place, they were already seeing how much faster things were, how much more reproducible they were in regards to results, which meant their waste was going down, their efficiency levels were already increasing. So they could see how digitalization was helping them. The one big thing that came out with these small specialty companies over and over was that they wish they had started 5 years ago. And the reason they hadn't started in most cases was resources, whether it was budget resources that they didn't have, or they didn't have people resources to get it done. They were they were worried about if they had to do digitalization, how it would slow them down, and they couldn't take a risk of slowing down, and they couldn't hire a specific team to just do digitalization for them. So this was some of the problems that came out, or why they weren't able to start as early as they wanted to do it. But now they are definitely working at it, and they want to catch up to where the big global companies were. The global companies, remember that these specialty companies, when I asked where they were on a scale of 1 to 5, they said they were at a 2 or 3. These global chemical companies, they were at a level 4. So they are really into the digitalization. They have been doing it for a while. When I asked when they started, most of them said at least 15 years ago, but they said they had always been doing something that was digital. It's just that they didn't call it that back then. Keep in mind that these are laboratories, giant laboratories. So sensors, monitoring temperatures, monitoring if there's a leak in the air. All these things were something they had been already monitoring way back in the 60s. When computers came out back then, they were already using it. So the data was different. They have a lot more data now, but they were already doing what they could with technology back then, and it's just been growing since then. So they have been taking advantage of the technology as it has come out, and they said they're doing a lot more now because the advances in technology is coming out faster and it's cheaper to do. So they don't need as much budget to do it. They said the biggest win that they can gather from the digitalization that's been coming on the last few years is they can now see data that they couldn't see before. They said in the old days, like 10 years ago, so not that long ago, some of the things that they weren't able to get data on was either it was too expensive to gather it, or the area was too hazardous to be able to access the information from. So they couldn't get wires into that area, or if people couldn't get into it. But now they can get this information remotely through the new digitalization that has come out. One common theme with them is automation. Automation was very important. And this is not just automation with can we have drones go around and check where things are? They are using that, or they're piloting that, they're testing that out. But they want automation with their processes. And the reason they want that is there's less chance of human error. And the more things that could be automated means things could be more efficient, there's less waste, and it also increases their safety. Successes overall in digitalization, as you can already tell from the study, is the chemical industry likes digitalization. They see it as an advantage to help them. So they've already been seeing, whether they're the small specialty companies or the bigger ones, the data collection across the supply chain has dramatically improved. They're able to track different things. And as I mentioned, they've been using digitalization for a while with these sensors and other areas. So they've been able to track where their chemicals are going. They're able to collect where things are within their processes. Their sensors are more advanced now. So before they were able to have like it was more like a light. So they said they would have, if something was bad, a red light would flash, yellow was cautionary, things were heating up, need to go check on it, green, everything was as good as gold. So now they don't have just the red, yellow, green. They can get a lot more information. They can really see when they can do their maintenance. They know what's running a little less efficiently, what's burning up a little too much energy, and they can make these little changes right away. So they're really liking this data collection that's happening across their supply chain. Their smarter systems, these simulations are getting better. So they're really, some of the global companies have been using digital twins for a while, so they are really liking it. They're already talking about, they can't wait to see how AR, machine learning, and AI is going to help them. So they are looking forward to these smarter systems. Even the smaller ones who are on that scale at the level 2 or the 3, while they're not ready for AR or virtual reality, they're thinking about it. They are looking at, they know it's going to come. They know they can't pull it in now. They might not have the resources, they might not have the budget, but they know it's going to happen within the industry. And they're looking at, if I'm updating my system now in digitalization, what do I need to do so that when I can get to the level of incorporating these newer technologies for better simulations, that I'll be ready and I don't have to start all over again from scratch. The better informed decisions was another big success. And again, this comes with the more automation. It's automation of processes, automation of calculations. Again, they are looking at how chemical formulas. So this is helping them make better decisions and how they can improve safety overall. Again, they can monitor everything in real time anywhere. So they are able to see the temperatures. They are able to see leaks. They are able to see any hazard areas if anything's going on. The automation is reducing human error. So again, that improves the safety. So all these things are increasing their safety. And as I mentioned, they are looking forward to the future. They can't wait to see what next is coming. There are challenges, of course, with every success, there's going to be challenges. So the technology is changing really quickly, and while they're loving it, the more data they have, that means there's different talent. So getting this talent is a big challenge for them. It's a different talent pool this year, or these years. In the past generations, they would stay for 30, 40 years at one company. So they would know all this information, and it would stay within the company. Now, when they bring somebody new in, they might stay maybe 5 years, 10 years, and then they leave and they take all this knowledge with them. And that makes a big gap, because then they have to train somebody new who doesn't have this knowledge and bring it forward. So they're looking at, when they have this data, what talent do I need? They also need talent that understands how to read the new data. So when this virtual reality stuff comes in, and when they get the digital twins, if they don't have them already, do they have the talent who can actually take advantage of the data that they're collecting, and to make the efficiencies and the changes that are required? They are looking for more advanced analytics. They've had a taste of what digitalization could do, and they want more, faster, faster, faster. More visuals. We want to be able to see, which means they need stronger connections, more reliability. They want more. As it said, cybersecurity is still a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge, and they know this, and they're always going to have to be building up on top of it. One of the reasons is chemical companies are one of the targets for terrorists. If something goes wrong there, if they get hacked, it could cause a big problem regionally. It doesn't just contain in one area. So security is a challenge, and they're looking at it in different ways. So they're looking at it through their security systems, and that's with their IT department. But they're always also looking at it from a safety issue. If something happens, even if it's not something that was hacked, but something where, I don't know, something went wrong, how can they close off an area? How can they contain it? How can they get early warning systems in? So they are looking at safety as well as part of their security areas. Legacy systems is a problem overall, and I'm sure this is also happening in other manufacturing areas. So just like the other manufacturing areas, what they have with the legacy systems is the problem of, I don't have budget to change everything. And if I did have the budget to change everything, that's a lot of training that has to go on, a lot of learnings, and that could slow us down. If I just change some bits and build a bridge, what happens when the software changes? Then I have to spend a whole bunch of money and build a new bridge. So they're looking at all these different things with the legacy systems. They said another problem that they have is with their equipment, they buy it from different companies. So they might buy one piece from one company here, another company has this one, and then they're not talking to each other. So when they're building this digitalization, it's how do I get my systems to connect and work together? So that's another problem that they're having with these systems. Something else that they're talking about, and this was more on the ones that are already global. So the ones that are already got their digitalization down pat internally and everything's working kind of smooth and they're liking it. They said that where there's a gap now is in their external processes. They have everything great inside, but connecting with their customers and the other parts of the supply chain, that doesn't have the same connectivity that they have internally. So they're looking for what's going to come out in the future to help us get up to that area. And an example that they gave, because they know this technology exists, but they said, we don't know why it's not happening yet with our industry, is they said that when I call my bank knows my last transaction, they know my birthday, they know where I am, they know everything about me, and I expect them to know that, and I expect it to keep it secure, and that's how it works. They said, we don't have that same kind of knowledge with our customers. We don't know how much of the product they've used. We don't know if they're using it efficiency. We don't know if it's time for them to order. So we should start getting our supplies ready. So we don't have that same kind of connection that B2B might have in these external processes. So they're looking forward to that. And then changing legislation, that's always happening. And they said that is a worry for them because that sometimes will affect what they put in for the digitalization process because they have to make changes. And how flexible is the system that they put in? So they're looking for help in that area as well. When it comes to the future, there's a couple things that came up. One thing that I found really interesting because I asked them about if sustainability right now was a big concern when they were a reason for them to be doing their digitalization. And they said it wasn't. It was always a byproduct. It happened. Just like safety. Safety was automatically fixed and improved because of the digitalization that they had put in. They said when they put their digitalization in, most of their KPIs were around efficiency, reducing waste, being able to reproduce things over and over in the same way because then you have, again, less waste. Energy efficiency was a big concern, especially for the big global ones. They use a lot of energy. So where they can save on energy made it better for them. So they were using their digitalization for that kind of stuff. And that automation of processes, automation of calculations. So all these kind of things kind of help their sustainability already, more efficient, less energy use, less waste. The automation improved their safety. So these things were already happening with the digitalization that they were doing, but they said going forward, building in digitalization specifically for sustainability accountability was going to be something that they can see coming up. They said that traceability was going to become a big part of their puzzle. They will need to show exactly where everything came from, right down to a molecule level to see if everything was sustainable the whole way. Some of them are already looking at blockchain, so they're seeing if as blockchain is becoming part of the supply chain, that sustainability accountability is also going to become a bigger challenge for them. And that's where they're looking for the digitalization help, being able to track everything in real time. Where is it? Where did it come from? How can I prove things? They are also looking for these new technologies, as I mentioned earlier. They are looking at machine learning. They're reading about it. They are excited about what it could do. They don't really know how it can help them, so they're looking for advice on how can these new technologies help us. We feel that they could be interesting, but we don't know what the best practices are or how we can get them. They don't want to even the bigger ones. The bigger ones might sound like they have everything, but they are still cautious. Like they're piloting some things, but they said they don't want to get new technology for the sake of new technology. They always want to make sure that it can meet a specific KPI, but they know this could meet a specific KPI. They just need to know how. So but they're looking forward to it. So that, Caroline, that is basically what a quick summary of what the report talks about.
Great insights, Michelle. Thank you very much. It was interesting to hear you say that the chemicals and plastics industry are very similar to many of the other manufacturers. But do you see any particular challenges that are significant for this industry that are a commonality?
There were different. The first one was that they are very laboratory focused. So that's why they are more advanced than some of the other manufacturing companies that are out there. They were not able to not do digitalization at an early stage. They needed to have sensors. They needed to be running data as soon as data was available. So they embraced it a lot earlier. So that was one of the nuances that came up right away. Everybody said when I asked them, when did you start your digitalization? They said, we were always digital. We called it something different, but we were always doing something digital because that's just the way things were done. So that was something that was different right away. The other thing that came up was the security issues, because they were looking at security not just from the cyber side, but from a hazard side. If things leaked, if things exploded, if things got stolen or went missing. So some of the security issues that they're looking at are not just with if somebody came into my systems and did something. That is still a problem. And they said a lot of times that's, again, human error. They want this automation. How can they stop human error? Because he said a lot of the cyber stuff is somebody accidentally leaked a password or let somebody in by accident. But the other security issues were, how can I track to make sure I have every single canister of this particular thing? Because if one went missing and the authorities called me and said, did this come from you? That I could say, no, all mine are here, or
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
is missing and it left at this date. So they are very specific of where everything is. And that was something that's a little bit different from the other manufacturing, just because of the nature of their business.
Yeah, huge risk to human error in that sense,
Yes.
and consequences potentially.
Yes.
So of the industry experts you spoke to many different personas, if you like, right? C-level, plan managers, digital transformation. Anything that is the red line principle of all the different disciplines you spoke to?
They were really interesting. You could see the differences. You have your big global ones where resources is a problem across all of them. But with the big global companies, they had the budget, and because they had been doing digitalization for so long, they already had departments that's all that department focused on is putting this in place. Or if they had a specific problem, they hired a team of consultants to come in for 2 to 5 years to make everything work. So you had those kind of ones, and then you had your specialty chemicals, where these people were doing this digitalization project and on top of their additional job. So they were learning as they're going. They were very entrepreneurial, exciting to speak with. That was something that came out, that they had learned things from previous roles, were bringing in the best practices that they had learned, and really trying to pull this off with a very, very tiny team and limited budget and very limited resources. They were curious about what was happening, but they were moving slower. They didn't. Their roadmap was longer because they couldn't do everything they wanted at one time. So they needed to figure out ways to prioritize. What could I do? What would give me the biggest impact? What would be the right order to do things because I can't do everything at once? So they were looking at things a lot differently than the global ones were looking at things. The other problem that they had was, say I came in and I'm really into digitalization. I've done it in my job and I'm going to put this all in place. And then something happens at 3 a.m. and I'm not at work. The guy on the floor is like, what do I do now? So they said one of the things they need to think about is, I need to put stuff in that is easy, that runs itself, because I can't be there 24/7 and I don't have a big digitalization team or even a big IT team to help me. So they're thinking of things a little bit differently from the global ones.
Yeah. Great. Makes sense. So Neto, let's go to you and tell me a little bit about your experiences with digitalization in the chemical industry, because you worked with many customers in this space. So anything from your side on their challenges?
So thank you. We see internal and external factors for the industry, and the most driving part is the enhancement of the efficiency in many various areas. And for example, the increase of the safety and the worker assets, but also to overcome the technical limitations we see from today's connectivities, for example.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. So let's go to Catherine now. Catherine, it's great to have you here, and thank you for joining. So a little bit of background: Cellnex and Nokia have a strong partnership, and the two companies have been working on many different digitalization projects so far. And one example is BASF's chemical plant in Tarragona, Spain. It's a very iconic project for us, and I would love for you to tell us more about that. So Catherine, over to you.
Thanks, Caroline. Really appreciate it. So in 2020, BASF came to Cellnex, who was working with Nokia, on some challenges that they had and a desire to really look at what a private network and a private 5G network might do to them. And in essence, we started working together on what would become the first private network in a chemical plant anywhere in Spain. At their Tarragona plant, which is the second largest plant they have in their business, and I think they have something like 247 plants. BASF decided early on that 5G was going to be an enabling technology for them to further their digital transformation. Now, a little bit about why. Why would they look at that? Well, what private networks and private 5G will give a chemical plant is a whole variety of things that you just can't get from your normal IT stack, and you definitely don't get from the likes of Wi-Fi or a public mobile network. What you get is a mission critical private network that is wholly dedicated to the particular enterprise. I like to say it's a network that is where you want it. So if you need it in between two tanks, you can get connectivity there. I think Michelle mentioned one of the things that was such a innovation for the digitalization today was the ability to get connectivity in places that you couldn't get it before because it was too dangerous, too difficult to do. You can have it how you want it. In essence, do you need it to be up and mission critical 24/7, always working? A private network can be designed that way. And then also how you want it. What are you using it for? What sort of latency, what sort of throughput do you need? So BASF decided this is the thing that they needed to try out. Will this work? Will this help them be more safe? Will this help them combat human error? And as Michelle said, is this going to be the mechanism by which they can gather a lot of data? And sure enough, recently, I'm really pleased to say that the trial is now not just a trial, it is operational. Thanks, Caroline.
Great, that was very insightful. Good to hear that. So a little bit on the size, because this is a huge site, right? It's 100 hectares, outdoor and indoor. It has probably dark spots, so you can't possibly do this with Wi-Fi, or can you?
I would say it would be difficult to do with Wi-Fi if you did it across the entire estate. It would be hundreds of access points. And the challenge of hundreds of access points is getting electricity in places that there's not electricity. That's one thing. Second is managing those hundreds of access points. If you can imagine, you need a staff to make sure all the access points are up and working. And then the other challenge is, what if one of those access points is out and a worker or a machine can't send the data back and there's a problem? So it's a huge risk. Again, mission critical is what the private network is really designed for.
Yeah, That's great. And then, of course, you have connectivity, but what do you do with that mission critical connectivity? What's next? And I mean, Nato, do you want to elaborate on what you see in talking to various customers?
Of course, I mean, beside the connectivity advantages, what we have with the cellular network, like the increase of coverage area, the bigger density we can have in this area per cell of user devices or connected sensors, for example, machines, workers, a variance of use case can be incorporated as we have a reliable network for the mission critical connectivity. So what we can see, or we can distinguish between several areas, is the digital campus, where we have, for example, facility management, or we have a digital plant twin to monitor what is happening on the digital campus. We have the automated campus, for example, where we can see machine-to-machine communication as a use case, or increased quality management by condition or process monitoring. We can incorporate different smart assets into this process, where we can see augmented reality, for example, or control of the assets in terms of the condition of the asset, and to enable predictive maintenance simply through digitalization of those assets and sending back those critical data to the workforce.
If I can add to that, I would also add autonomous guided vehicles. So one thing, if you take a look at that picture of the plant, there are a variety of different um, uh, warehouses or buildings. And from those buildings, as Michelle talked about, it's a big lab, but you still have to get um, it- either some sort of devices from one place to another. You've got to get different parts from one place to another, and you want to get them from one place to another in a safe manner and in a timely manner. And with autonomous guided vehicles, you don't have to wait for someone to come off of coffee break to get something from one place to another. You can send it on its way with an autonomous guided vehicle. There's no concern that it's going to run into someone. And in the case of forklifts, which is one of the most dangerous things that are on a plant floor, they can go on their own from place to place without human intervention or without running into a human.
It's a fantastic
Exactly.
use case indeed. I saw, I was talking to a customer the other day, and they saw a 25% increase in cycle time. So the AGVs could deliver supplies to the plant and to the various parts of the production line a lot quicker because of the reliability of that critical connectivity, right? So really good cases on how it can improve productivity, and I guess also worker safety, right? With what you were saying, with humans taking corners too quick. That won't happen with an AGV, I guess.
Exactly.
Definitely. I mean, when we talk about worker safety, it's the connected worker itself. So it can be a support from a remote guy guiding the worker on a machine, on a process, through reliable video connectivity. Push to video, push to talk is possible, of course. But also a man down alert. We can also use this as an example, where also reliable connectivity is very crucial. I mean, this cannot be happened through Wi-Fi, as it is not secured that the connectivity is sustainable and reliable.
No, I can build on that a bit for you. So,
Please.
I mean, I think one of the things with a private network, and we're talking about networks, but really it's all the stuff that goes on top of it that will build which will continue to build the digital transformation story for the chemical world. And the fact that the plant size is enormous. 100 hectares is enormous. Most plants are not that big, but they're quite big. They're outdoor, they're in hazardous areas. And what the private network does, it sits as an island. You can cut off the rest of the world and they can still continue to get the data that they need to make the decisions that they need to make, regardless of if something happens on the site. Michelle mentioned a few different things that could happen. You might have to close the doors. You might have to have an emergency somewhere, and as Neto said, send a drone in. It gives a plant an opportunity to really be um, working alone, and continuing to work regardless of what happens in the rest of the world.
Digitalization is really changing the industry. One example that they gave me is one of the people I spoke to said he was speaking to somebody who was redoing something within their plant, and he asked, "Where's the control room?" And they said, we're not having one. The control room is on every tablet of every worker. So that control room is everywhere within the plant, not just in one space anymore. So very interesting how digitalization is changing the whole way it's working.
And the mobility of people as well, I guess, with that. But it's not as simple as connecting any device, right? You need, especially for the chemical manufacturing, you need ATEX certification. Anyone want to elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. This is a demand they have in terms of security and safety. And therefore, all the devices, for example, on this site also need to be ATEX certified in a different category. So, and for example, Nokia, we also do take care about that issue and have this as part of our program. So ATEX certified devices can also be part of our solution.
Yeah. Great to hear. There was one other use case you mentioned, Neto, earlier, this remote condition monitoring. And I guess, Michelle, that really fixes the problem from the plant manager that you were talking about of being up 24/7, right? Because if you digitalize it all, someone's up 24/7 and can get an alert if something happens, no?
Yes, that would definitely make a difference, because that was a big issue of how can we run this all the time? Who do we need to have on staff? How knowledgeable does everybody have to be? So that makes it a lot easier for them.
Great. Good. I think maybe what I would ask all of you now is to recap the main points you've talked about in terms of, Michelle. Maybe you can start with the key challenges you see for this industry. I mean, they've come a long way. There's still a long way to go. I mean, what's next? What do you think is most important from the research you've done?
They have a couple things. The first is more data. They want more, and they want to be able to use this data. So having everything in real time, faster, always reliable all the time, because that helps with their security and their efficiency. That's important to them. Filling in the gaps. So they had the gaps of resources. That's still a problem, big or small. They need more people. So they need to know where they're going. They need to know how to do it. They need to know what would be the steps to keep moving forward. So that was a gap, especially with the ones that were out of 2 or 3, because they are striving to catch up to these global ones that are out of 4, because they know they need to get there, and they need to know how can I get there fast with what I have without scaring off everybody in the company that we're going too fast. So they're looking for an efficient roadmap. And the other thing that was the external, that was another gap that was coming up. Internal is kind of moving along nice, but how do we have the same level of digitalization and connectivity with our customers?
Great. Catherine, anything to add to that as main conclusions?
So I think the main conclusion, based on what Michelle has said and Neto, is that digitalization is here. And we may say, oh, we're going through this digital transformation. Well, we're constantly transforming, but digital transformation is here, and it is quite advanced. The 5G private network is here, and businesses have identified it does work, and it is a major aspect of digital transformation. It's something that underpins all of this work together. And working together between Cellnex and Nokia, as an example, is a great way to start looking at digitalization transformation.
Great. Could agree more. Neto, anything from your end?
Yeah, I can agree on all what is being said, and just add that beside the public coverage, what we can see today and what was available up to now, we can have this public-private coverage and networks for mission-critical purposes. This in all of the world. We can establish that. And Cellnex is a very good example with BASF in Spain to make this happen. And I can encourage all of you just to go for it and to explore it and ask us if you have questions, and we can make it happen for you.
Great, thank you. That's a nice ending. The final message I have was based on something Michelle said about how many of the chemical industry players found it a fragmented landscape, right? That integration is sometimes challenging and difficult, and takes a long time then to get digitalization going. So I guess the key from my end is that's exactly what we see as well. So we try to solve that by not just having the private wireless networks, but also having the industrial edge, the devices and the applications all available to make that simpler, right? To make it faster, to move ahead and help also with the resource issue, with making that complexity simple. So thank you all very much. This was very informative and a great discussion.